Hello, all of my wonderful nonprofit whisperers out there. So excited to welcome you back to another wonderful episode. I hope that you have subscribed. I hope that you have subscribed below and that you've shared our channel with your friends and other individuals and colleagues that you know that are in the nonprofit sector and would benefit from this. Come on, share, be kind. I am very excited because for the first time, we are inviting a special guest onto our episodes here. And so with us today, we're going to have my friend, Mike Kim. Now, Mike is a brilliant, brilliant mind and has been in marketing for many years. Now, you might ask why? Oh, why, Erika? Are we having a whole other kind of person, especially on marketing? Well, if any of you, as you know, have worked in nonprofit for any amount of time, you understand how vital and how important marketing and branding is to the nonprofit sector and to basically anything happening anywhere in 2021 and beyond. And so I am happy to have Mike with us because he has an extremely impressive background and has worked with some very high profile names. And so I will let you get into the episode before sharing those, just so that you start to watch that episode. And so without further ado, you're going to have myself, your host, Erika Gerena, Jim Dempsey, the co-host, and then you're going to have Mike Kim join us and break down some very key marketing principles on how to better serve your nonprofit. You don't want to miss this one. So share it with your friends and stay tuned. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Well, welcome everyone to the latest episode of Nonprofit Whisperer, where we reach out to nonprofit organizations wanting to make a difference in our world today. My co-host, Erika Gerena, is with me. I'm Jim Dempsey, and together we have over 50 years of experience in working with nonprofit organizations. This is really an exciting episode for us today, as we've got a special guest, Mike Kim, who's a marketing guru, marketing expert, and we're excited to have him with us today. Erika, you've known Mike for over a year and a half now, and you've become close friends. Tell us a little bit about Mike.
Mike, we're so excited to have you on our show today. You are our first guest, so I couldn't wait to have you. Yeah, and to talk about, of course, the things that make sense marketing, because so many of us, we start these great causes and we have a passion and a heart to make a difference in our communities. And then we don't know how to tell the message right, or how to share it with other people, or invite people into our world to experience that and get engaged with us. And so that is why we were so excited to have you on today. But yes, I've known Mike for a couple of years now, even beyond that. He has been such a great help for me. And I know one of the main things, like, for me, that I had to ask Mike about was my friends and I, we always argue about how my social media needs to be better. And I told Mike, I was like, Mike, but the thing is that I'm a very private person, and the clients that I work with have to be very kind of quiet. You know, I can't really put my business out there, and confidentiality and what I handle is very, behind the scenes, and I have to be very careful. And Mike freed me because he told me the difference. He taught me that there's a difference of different things. And so, Mike, welcome to our show, and let's jump right into it. Well, first, welcome. And then can you answer that question of what was the things that you taught me about what the difference was, that people always get messed up about social media?
Yeah, well, I'm honored to be with you guys, Jim, Erica, and for all those who are tuning in or listening. I hope to add some value to you today. Um, I think when it comes to social media, people get so caught up on social media, and we think that um, we have to share everything that we're doing. And when it comes to nonprofits or even personal brands, which is who I work primarily with, and what I mean by personal brand is coaches, speakers, experts, consultants, people whose name is on the business card,
Mhm.
right? These are folks who are thought leaders. And what we're all doing, we're all trying to do when we're building a brand, whether it's a nonprofit brand, it's a solopreneur brand, whatever it is that we're trying to craft an identity for people to understand our ideas, our expertise, our experiences, and our personality. And so, Erika, probably somewhere along the line, I shared with you, you don't have to share about all your client work. You just need to connect with people.
Mhm.
People are looking for connection, not perfection.
Yes.
And that's what can paralyze a lot of us when it comes to social media or communications, whether for ourselves or for our organizations. We think everything's got to be perfect. And that's what will compel people to take action, next steps with us. But really, you're just looking for connection points and to tell stories and to really build, if you will, a community around the stuff that you share. We can go into that a little bit, but I'm glad you got set free. And now here you are launching a podcast, the two of you. This is amazing. This is
Yeah.
only going to help people. It's never going to be a bad thing. So congrats,
Thanks.
congrats.
Thanks,
Yeah.
brother. So now, speaking of identity, tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Yeah, so today I spend my days as a marketing consultant and a brand strategist, primarily again for thought leaders. And there are two sides to my business. On one hand, with my private clients, these are folks who have a considerable amount of influence. They have authored books. They have large audiences already, and so they'll bring me in to craft their marketing campaigns, usually for books or information products or coaching programs. So I'm marketing people and their ideas. And over the years, I've been able to work with some well-known folks in the business space, like John Maxwell is a leadership author, Donald Miller from StoryBrand, multiple best-selling author. Some of the organizations that are built around this, especially in the ministry and Christian ministry space, Catalyst Leadership, a big training conference was a
Yes, I
client of
love that.
mine. So uh, I'm really marketing people and their ideas and helping them craft, uh, campaigns. Dr. Daniel Amen, he's a client of mine right now. And yet on the other side, where it comes to podcasting and my blog and my social media, I'm really like a coach and I'm an online educator, taking the principles that I use to help my clients and teaching them to folks who are just starting out and they're getting used to communicating a message, clarifying their message, helping them understand who their target market is and what their value proposition is. And it is a challenge, guys, because you know a lot of folks come out of corporate America or they come out of organizations or ministries or nonprofits where a lot of those decisions are made for them. And now when they start their own cause, they start their own organization or they're setting out on their own in any sort of way. Now instead of wearing just one hat, they're wearing like seven.
So
They're the
true.
marketing person, they're the salesperson, they're the
Right.
content creator,
Right.
they're the customer service person, right? They're all of these things at once, and it gets very overwhelming. So I help them cut through the noise and at least get their messaging and their branding right.
Boy, that's great, Mike.
I love that.
Mike, what for the nonprofit, kind of getting started, they probably feel like they're the best kept secret out there. What are some of the tips that you would give some of these organizations? It sounds like you're working with some of the organizations and individuals already that have established reputations. What would you recommend, or what would you say to an organization that's just getting off the ground and they're trying to build that reputation? What are some of the first things that they need to be thinking about?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is they've got to write what I call sticky stories. And there are three that every organization needs to have. Number one is the founder story, and that is the person who has founded the organization.
Mhm.
And that's more like their origin story and why they care about this cause. And I'll dive a little bit deeper into that.
Mm.
The second is the organization story, right? It is the nonprofit's story, which is very different sometimes than the founder story. And the third, of course, is the transformation story, the life of, or the lives that are going to be impacted or have been impacted by that organization. So, for example, we might have a nonprofit that was started. A good friend of mine named Rob Morris runs a nonprofit called Love 146. And Rob has always cared about children. Adoption is big on his heart. He's got like 18 kids, not really, but it seems to me that way. And he's always had a compassion for kids. And many of his kids have been adopted from overseas. Well, as a natural consequence of that, he started to discover what was really going on in the sex trade with some of these countries. It's just horrible, horrible things. And so he started to get involved in some organizations that were looking at shutting down some of these operations and rescuing the kids. And that was his founder story. This is why he even cared about children in this regard. And if Rob were going to, guys, Jim, Erika, guys like we know, he would have to tell that story just in the same way a startup CEO would have to go and raise capital, venture capital, right? You need to have that pitch deck. You need to have that story. So what I say to folks when they're launching any kind of endeavor and they're looking at their founder story, I'm asking them some very, very specific questions. Eric and I are kind of from Jersey, so we're a little bit more salty. So I'm not pushing the language, but I'm just getting a little bit emotional. I ask them, what pisses you off? What breaks your heart? And what's the big problem you're trying to solve? Because when I ask you what pisses you off, that is the injustice. And that's a strong word. It's the injustice you see in the world. And Rob saw injustice before his very eyes. The compassion he has, or what breaks his heart, is the compassion he has. So our messages need to have both. It's a double-edged sword, right? And so his compassion was for these children. And what that became was the start of his nonprofit. And I'm going to go into that story in a second. And then, of course, what is the big problem he solves? Of course, that is the purpose of the organization. So I start there, Jim, because if I can't get to the core of why this gentleman or this lady is starting a nonprofit, or why this group of people are starting this, and that message doesn't come from their core, people are going to know. The message isn't going to align with who they are internally. Okay. So what pisses you off? What breaks your heart? What's the big problem you're trying to solve? When you have the answers to these questions, the founder story, the organization story, and the transformation story all fall right into place. And I can dig into this a little bit deeper, but that's where we start.
That's great. I love that. I love that.
So what are some of the essentials in creating, once you have that, like what are some of the essentials, the key essentials to creating an effective marketing plan?
Yeah, so I'll kind of tell people how to tell some of these stories, because I think that's exactly where all that comes together, Erika. So a lot of times, and I'll use Rob as an example, because I guess he's just going to be the example for today, right? Because so
shout out to Rob.
Yeah, shout out to Rob, right? And if this wasn't planned, Rob, so we're showing you some love. But and they do great work, right? And I'm a supporter of theirs. But oftentimes, Erika, when it comes to a marketing campaign, we get way too cerebral. And we start to think about, we need to prove we're going to do X, Y, Z and ABC and 1, 2, 3 by X number of days, and we need X number of dollars to raise. Now, that's really important. But all of that has to be contextualized by story. I always say that content is king, but context is the kingdom. You've got to provide context as to why you need to raise this money, or why this mission or this endeavor is important. When we tell stories in real life, let me back up for a second. When we look at any story we read or watch on screen, we have a character, and he or she has a normal life. There's normalcy. There is then an explosion, and then there's a new normal. And the rest of the story is about how that character navigates this explosion and new normal. When we tell stories in the marketing or in the fundraising space, for some reason we turn that off. And we get back into our 8th grade English teacher, grammar teacher, and we get all of this normal. We spend way too much time on how life is normally. And we're taking way too long to get to the explosion. If you've ever sat around and waited, what is the point of the story? It's because the person's taking too long
So
to
good.
get to the explosion.
Get there.
So we do this all the time in real life. You come home from work, you've had a tough day. Hey, honey, how was work? You'll never believe what this idiot Mike Kim did in today's meeting. Oh, he's such a. You start there, right? That's what you don't say to your spouse or your significant other. Oh, well, I drove down Route 4 today and I just hung a right on the Garden State Parkway. What is the point?
Right. That's
right.
good.
Or we catch up for dinner in Orlando or New Jersey. Orlando's probably nicer, guys. So I vote for Orlando. But Jim will go see you there. And I come out of the Uber and I look a little distraught. And Erika, you're like, Mike, what's wrong? I dropped my phone coming out of the Uber. The whole thing is broken. Now, that's not a Saul on the road to Damascus blinding flash of light moment, but it is an inciting incident. So when we tell stories, I'm looking for normal, explosion. I want to start there. And then what's the new normal? So we weave that into all the emails, all the campaigns. We figure out what the angle is to the entire campaign. So I don't want to throw 10 different angles on a campaign. I want to find one thread that ties everything together. And it's based in story. And now I know I've been talking for a while, but let me use Rob as an example while this is fresh on my mind. So Rob's got his founder story. He loves kids. He's adopted kids, and his eyes are open to this whole new world of what's really going on with these kids that are being trafficked. But the organization story, and he told me this story, and I was gripped by this story. He went to Thailand and he volunteered to wear a camera into one of these brothels. And he was with this sting operation and they were recording evidence. Now, they weren't going to go in and bust the kids out that day. They just had to record evidence. And he's seeing the kids behind these glass walls. And they've all got numbers on their chests. It's like the marathon runners, and perpetrators would go in there and just call them out by number. I want that one. I want that one. And he said all the kids' eyes, the girls, looked dead. Like they had no souls except for this one girl. And she had this fire in her eyes and was like, you will not take my soul from me. She just had this look of defiance. And what number was she wearing? 146. And he remembered that girl. It just, in his mind, that was the start of their organization. So you can see these are two different stories. Rob is the thread that ties them together. Two different stories, and you need both. Now, the transformation stories, of course, the countless a number of kids that they've helped over the years, provided survivor care for. And, it gives me goosebumps, sharing the story because I was there with him not too long, a couple years back. He took me to where that happened. And it was his first time back there at the brothel that he went into and saw that girl. And the heartbreaking thing, the open loop in the story is he's never found out what happened to that girl. And she's probably 30 something years old now.
Wow.
And he came back into the van. He said, I wonder, Mike, if she knows how her life inspired our organization and how it has impacted countless lives. I hope to God she's alive. And we don't know. I got goosebumps just telling this. That's what compels people.
Yeah, that's good.
And you start at the explosion. It's, he met this girl with fire in her eyes. And here's this guy who just cared about children, but then went into a sting operation. And this is what we need to craft into our campaigns. And we're just finding one angle per campaign. And that's how we kind of, build all that out.
Boy, that's great, Mike. I appreciate that. Well, I guess it could be just the opposite in my question, but my question is, what do most organizations get wrong about marketing? I'm assuming it's more than just missing what you've just said. But what are some of the things, what are the big things that you think they're just missing the mark every time when they try and put their organization out there?
Yeah, I think one of the things is not communicating frequently enough. And I know that sounds like a paradox. But my work in marketing, and I do mostly digital marketing, is the data doesn't lie, Jim. If you send out emails to a database of people, 20%, 18 to 20% is the normal open rate. of an email campaign,
Right.
which means if you're only sending an email once a month, your readers, your subscribers, the people who have raised their hand and said, yes, I want to hear from you, are only reading 3 emails a year. That is not a good way to keep relationship. You guys tell me one relationship where you can go talking 3 times a year and really like go try talking to your spouse or your kids or your best friend 3 times a year. Be like, yeah, we're good.
Right.
There's no such thing as a thriving relationship if you don't talk. So the first thing I often do is how often are you emailing your people? These are your closest people. How often are you emailing or contacting your supporters? So let's turn that up a notch. If it's once a month, let's do twice a month. If it's twice a month, let's do weekly. And then they'll often ask, well, what do we say in these emails? And we tell stories. And then I help them craft out that plan. Or there are a lot of things we can look at just using the calendar to come up with ideas. But the big mistake, and what I'm really, really referring back to, is that oftentimes we feel like we only reach out to people when we need their money. And nobody likes that.
That's right.
So I'm really an advocate for building relationship.
It's the ATM syndrome. Yeah.
It is. It is. It is. And I will say this about marketing, Erika, to one other thing. This, and I'm in the marketing and business space, and I say this all the time though, and it's applicable here. Marketing isn't about closing a sale. It's about opening a relationship.
That's right.
And if you can make that shift, you will see marketing very differently. If you view sending emails or creating social media content or doing a fundraising gala as a relationship building step, as an opening to a relationship, it changes the way that you do everything. And it becomes much easier. So in the same way with fundraising, marketing isn't about, closing the donation. It's about opening relationships. And then we can take the next step.
And in that same vein, we also learned that it takes money to make money, right? To get more money. And so what have you found and what do you often recommend to folks? Like, are the top 2 like areas that they should primarily invest in, or at least start investing in when it comes to marketing? Because I think this is somewhere where people always get stuck, and there's always an expert at the table that's a non-expert that is telling the organization what to do because they, have 3 followers and just opened up a Facebook account or whatever. So, but it's always that person that's the loudest in the room in nonprofits. Yes. And so, but like, where should they invest, especially nonprofits, because they don't have this, never ending marketing budget. I mean, who doesn't anymore these days, but they don't have that kind of a budget. So where should they start?
Yeah, well, and you mentioned as well too. No, just real quickly, you mentioned too, which made me think of the same thing. It's those people who know everything, those board members that say, "Oh, our people are being bombarded. Don't mail them so much." That made me think of that, Mike. So piggyback on that as well too, in answering Erika's question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, the first and foremost person I would hire is a copywriter. Is the person who writes. This line of work, this industry, nonprofits, is so marketing heavy. Yeah. I mean, it is incredible how much writing needs to get done. A web page, an email, a thank you letter, a social media post. Everything requires writing. We've got to write the pitch deck. We've got to write the brochure. All of that is writing. And what I see a lot of people do is focus on design or branding. And there's a place for that, but it doesn't help to look good and not say anything substantive.
Come on.
Yeah, most of our donors, they have 5-second attention spans, especially our bigger donors, because they're out and about. They're busy people. They don't have time to read, pages and pages or look through catalogs and find all the answers for themselves. We need to master the art of saying a lot with very little. So in a lot of situations, and I run a training company where we specialize in helping ministry leaders raise money, which is a very different, spin on it. But they are shocked at how much I will cut out. I'll say, you're saying too much. You need to say more with less. And that means that we need to like kind of distill what we're sharing. One of the other frameworks that I use with that is think about where the potential donor is on this progression. They're completely unaware. Then the next step is they become problem aware. They're aware that there's even a problem. Well, I didn't even know this problem with these kids in Thailand and Philippines existed. Now you need to make them solution aware. Well, we can help them rehabilitate through, counselors and doctors and so. Well, then the fourth step is to become product aware. And I use that word product, liberally right now because my friend's organization is not a product, but it is. It's a brand, Love 146. And then the donor is very aware. And now we can make the ask. We can make the ask to support. What a lot of nonprofits do is they go make the ask. And they haven't taken the time to educate people who are unaware that there is a problem, solution, product, and now they're aware. And in reality, this can all happen in 3 minutes. And what you do is with people who are unaware, and this is how it all matches up. And I'll type this out and send it to you guys so you can send out to everybody. When someone is unaware, you tell stories. When they are problem aware, right? Then they become problem aware. You share secrets. Guys, this is what's really going on in Bangkok. This is what's really going on in Manila. This is what's really going on with the authorities in those countries and why this is so problematic. Now, as you told that story, they become solution aware. Well, what is the solution? Can't we just close down all the brothels? Can't we just shut it all down? You can't, because it will destabilize the entire economy, because so much of it is dependent on this illegal trade, right? But there is a solution. We can rehabilitate some of the kids that we rescue. Who does that? Our organization does. Now they are product aware, right? What you do is just make promises. We promise we will use your money in the right way. We promise this is all done on the governance of, 501c3 leaders or whoever you want to say. You make these promises, and then when they're aware, you make the ask. So it's just when I look at a campaign, kind of peeling back to your question, Erika, I make sure every campaign has stories, secrets, solutions, the product, and the ask. And when you reverse engineer that, you'll see that a lot of campaigns, fundraising campaigns, are missing one or two of those key elements. And it's usually story and secrets, the first two, which breaks my heart, which is why I do what I do. And this is the problem that I fix, right? So, yeah.
You saw what he did there? I was like a full circle. I like that, how he closed that out. So Mike, I could talk to you for forever, of course. And we do need to continue this conversation for sure. But how can people get in touch with you? Because I know you have a summit coming up. I know you do mastermind groups. You do a bunch of different things. So how can people get in touch, and how can people register for that summit coming up?
Yeah. So the summit, we're hosting a summit later this year in late April. It's called the Fully Funded Summit. And it's my friend Mary and Mary Valloni. She's a fundraising consultant who's worked with the American Cancer Society, Special Olympics, ALS Association, as well as some other ministries. And we founded a company together where we're just teaching what we know and just sharing as much as we can. So that'll just be fullyfundedacademy.com/summit. And I'll send you guys the link. But really the best way to find me is just to email me. And in this scenario, it's to email me. I have a business podcast. I have products, but those are really for small businesses. And there is a lot of nuance when it comes to nonprofit. So just email me at mike@mikekim.com. If you're on Instagram or LinkedIn, we can connect there. Mike Kim TV is my handle, and we can just continue the conversation. And I check all messages. So you can rest assured you'll reach me.
I love that so much. And so we have to have you back, Mike. We have to have you back because there's so many other questions that we have for you. So I am so glad that you were with us today. And I know, Jim, I know you feel the same.
Oh, thanks, Mike.
I'm so excited. But I can't wait for everyone to hear this episode. And so thank you for being with us today. And we will see you, our Nonprofit Whispers, next time.